Hey, this is Danny Flexen and Joe Leigh for Seconds Out, and welcome you to the latest edition of Boxed In, a tiered list when we go through different divisions in boxing and separate the contenders from the pretenders, if you like. How you doing, Joe?
Yeah, all good today. Another stacked division for us to go through, and I'm excited once more.
So it's the light heavyweights. Um, really exciting division, as you said just now. I mean, the world champions alone are exciting enough and hoping that they meet at some point in the future. But there's a lot of top
Yeah,
contenders,
yeah, yeah.
people who've been to that world level already, some that are kind of snapping hot on their heels as well. And do you want to
Yeah.
kick off?
Why not? Yeah, I'll start, and I'll start with a Brit. Someone who's hopefully going to be involved in a domestic dust-up soon, Joshua Buatsi. He's in a bit of a sticky situation because he hasn't had a fight in a long time. He was meant to be fighting obviously in November. He fell ill, and then March, and obviously the pandemic. So he's had 2 training camps now that he's worked very hard for. So mentally, I hope he's in the right place when he fights again. As for where I'm going to put him and which category, it's clear that he's great balance, he's got great shot selection, great power, but he hasn't fought sort of a high sort of level yet. So even though he's 27, no, there's no rules. I'm going to put him in the young guns category just because I feel like, he needs to step up. Maybe like I know Callum Johnson would be a great fight. I know it's been flirted with over the last month or so as well. So hopefully, if we can get past him, then he can certainly look at being a European champion, then move on to world. But I think it's sensible to put him in the young guns category for now.
Yeah, good choice. And as you said, no rules. The rules are there are no rules. Um, but you started with a Brit, so I'll match you with another Brit, and it's Anthony Yarde. Um,
Yeah.
Unlike Buatsi, he has fought at top world level, albeit unsuccessfully, losing last year to Sergey Kovalev, his challenge for the WBO title out in Chelyabinsk in Russia. So it couldn't have been much more of a risk, really. It was a big leap from the opposition he'd been facing to go up against Kovalev. Um, Lost the majority of the rounds, it's fair to say, but had
Yeah.
Kovalev in a world of trouble. I think it was round 8 before running out of gas and eventually getting stopped. So he was seconds away from being a world champion. I think it's fair to say that, even though he wasn't up on the cards, he was so close to getting a stoppage. And I think Buddy McGirt in the Kovalev corner suggested that if he didn't see anything in the following round from his man, he was going to stop the fight. So
Yeah.
Yard knows that the main reason he didn't get the job done over there was a lack of experience, a lack of seasoning. And he's coming back in the autumn probably now against Lyndon Arthur. And then from there, hopefully, he'll
Yeah.
get another fight at world level and can get his way back towards another world title shot. One that he'll be more prepared for now and better from the experience. Talented fighter, explosive power, good defense. Lot to like about him. He's only going to improve from here, you would think. Limited amateur career, of course. So I'm going to put him in the contenders category. I don't think you can put him anywhere else at this stage.
Yeah, definitely. It's he's had that world experience and he's shown he belongs there. So there's no reason to not put him at the contenders, and he's certainly a good pick. I'll move on to the man that unfortunately beat him for a Brit, Sergey Kovalev. Now I've been sort of it's back and forth with depending on how you look at it because he's he's obviously just lost to Canelo, but that's sort of a fight that, he's not even in this division. It was a strange fight, but for me, looking at where to put him, it was mainly based on age. And he's obviously had been a former champion at this weight class before, but can he get it back? Because there's a strange situation with the WBO. Is the tournament now going to happen? Is it not? Then you've got the likes of dominant champions like Bivol and Beterbiev, and Jean Pascal, which is it's also a regular champion, but can he get a belt back? I don't think so. It might be a bit controversial. I just think that age is not on his side, and I'm going to put him in also around this.
Ooh, that is controversial. I
Yeah,
think that might end up being the headline, but wow. So
yeah.
you don't think that he'll beat either Bivol or Beterbiev
No,
or whoever
no.
comes
I
out
just
on top
think that
in the WBO
yeah,
side of things as well?
yeah. I think he's lined up to fight Sullivan Barrera. I think he'll beat him. I think that'll be an easy job, but I just think that the hunger with those younger guys just remains a big part of that fight. And I'm putting it down to age, to be honest with you.
Fair enough. Fair enough. I'm not
Yeah.
going to argue. So
Yeah.
we'll move on to Joe Smith Jr., who
Yeah.
a couple of years ago you might not have expected to even be in the 12 that we're discussing, but has
Yeah.
earned his chance. He first came to prominence, obviously, upset win over Andre Fonfara, who I think was coming off his own win over, it might have been Chavez Jr., but Fonfara was touted going into that fight, lost to Smith Jr., and then obviously Joe followed it up by ending the career of Bernard Hopkins, knocking him out the ring. And was ahead, I think, for 2 judges on the cards as well before that happened. So it wasn't a fluke win or a one-shot victory. Good fighter, blue-collar work ethic, big puncher as well. Coming off a good split decision win over Jesse Hart as well. So still probably around his physical prime as well. You know what you're going to get from Joe Smith Jr. and he's always going to put the effort in.
Yeah.
I'm not ready to put him in the also-rans category yet because I want to see who could come out in this WBO. There's 2 kind of eliminators before the vacant title fight. Looking at the 4 people involved, it wouldn't shock me if Joe Smith Jr. is going to be fighting Elida Alvarez in one of those 2 matches. Now, that's a tough fight for him. Elida Alvarez, who I've got on my list, I don't want to say too much, is a very good technical boxer. And we've seen Joe Smith Jr. come up short before against the likes of Sullivan Barrera, who you mentioned, and some others who have got those technical skills against him. So that will be an interesting fight. But if he does come through that, I could see him beating either of the 2 guys on the other side of that equation, Salamov and what's the other guy, Vlasov. So you can't write him off at this stage. There's a clear path for him winning that WBO belt. So I'm going to put him in the contenders category.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you've just said it perfectly. When you've got a path, you've got something to work towards. And I think with Joe in particular, I think he there's a high chance of him doing so, to be fair. I'll move on now to Marcus Brown, someone who, is only 29, but he's doing, can you hear me?
Yeah, just about.
Marcus Brown, someone he's just come off his first world title fight. Unfortunately for him, a loss. But he's only 29, and I think the way he fights as well, he's quite strong. He asserts his power as well, really well in the later rounds. And I think it's not over for him. I don't think, in the next year or so, he's going to get a world title. But I just think, with the age on his side, as I say, and the way he fights, I think the division's tailored towards him having a great fight in the next few years or so down the line.
Yeah, I think he'll have improved a lot from that fight with Pascal. And previous to that, Badu Jack, didn't he, as well? And a couple of tough fights for him, but I think he'll improve from it. And he's someone definitely worth looking at going forward.
With only 1 loss on his record as
well. So I did Joe Smith Jr. last time. I'm going to go to the other side of that fight, which should be taking place in July on ESPN, Top Rank show, and that's Elida Alvarez from Colombia, someone I remember from a long time ago in the Olympics, losing to Tony Jeffries in the Olympic quarterfinal, Britain's own, and Jeffries' obviously pro career was cut short, sadly. But Alvarez, he often fights within himself. That's the problem. He's too patient at times, content just to pick opponents apart. Although we saw in the first fight against Sergey Kovalev, when the opportunities present themselves, he can be a ruthless finisher. Tough guy, can take a shot, can give a shot, got all the technical skills he needs as well. It's just whether he's just gone past his prime, and I'm not sure about that yet. You'd make him an early favourite to beat Smith Jr. And as I said about Smith, more so with Alvarez because of his amateur pedigree and his technical skills, I could see him beating either of the 2 guys from the other side, Vlasov and Salamov. So I think he's still got to go in the contenders category, former world champion. But I think if he loses his next fight to Smith Jr., I think then he goes into also runs.
Yeah, definitely. It's an interesting time in his career, and it's such a great division because there's so many guys at the top. But I'm going to go on to Gilberto Zurdo Ramirez, 40-0, only having had 1 shot at light heavyweight so far, not at the title, but 1 sort of warm-up fight, if you like, and he looked fantastic. At the end of round 4, the corner team pulled him out, so he had a TKO, and I just think you know, the speed, the flair, the style of Ramirez is going to really fit into the light heavyweight division well. And he's spoken about lining up for his next fight, Beterbiev or Bivol, and I think, you know, he's going to get straight in there. And I think he'll win one of those fights. So I'm not sure which. Well, he doesn't know who he's going to fight yet because of obviously, you know, deals and stuff going through with the virus and everything. But when he does fight for that world title in his next fight, I could certainly pick him as the favourite. I don't think he'll be a far underdog or an underdog even at all.
So he's going into contenders then, presumably.
Yeah, contenders category. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. He was supposed to be in that WBO shake-up, but decided he didn't want to, and ended up Joe Smith Jr. came in to take his place against Alvarez.
Yeah.
And if he can get a straight shot at one of those other belts, that obviously makes sense. Although I'm not sure why he couldn't have just gone straight into a full world title shot, having been a WBO champion at super middle. Because usually that's the case, isn't it? You move up and you get a direct shot if you ask for it. But maybe because it was a vacant belt, that was a bit of an issue. I don't know.
Yeah, I think when he first came up to light heavy, it was actually like a strange thing. He put on too much weight originally. Not that that's anything to do with why he didn't get a shot, but it's probably just, you know, wanting to test himself, see if it's the right division before he actually gets the important shot. And I think he's lined himself up nicely so that when he next fights, he can get that shot now, and I don't think he'll have a problem in getting past whoever it is.
All right, well, now it's time for the man himself. And it's a shame we haven't got a double champion or a unified champion category. So we'll just have to go into world champions. And that's obviously Artur Beterbiev, the fearsome, formidable Artur Beterbiev, who recently unified IBF and WBC belts against Alexander Gvozdyk, who recently retired. A rare occasion of a boxer hanging the gloves up, probably at about the right time. Only that single defeat on his record, and a top boxer, but that just exemplifies how good Beterbiev is, that he managed to get through a fight like that. Many people saw it as 50-50 going in, but he was mostly in charge for the majority of the fight, and obviously got Gvozdyk out of there.
Yeah.
And he's just, there's no real weaknesses. I mean, I suppose he likes to get involved in a tear-up. He can be a bit reckless at times. But so what?
Yeah.
If you've got the power he's carrying and he's quite robust and physically strong, even if he is a bit reckless, who's going to take advantage of that to the point that they can knock him out? Now, maybe he can go up against like a master boxer, an Andre Ward type or someone like that, who's a bit rough but also technically skilled and can outbox him. But Beterbiev was a superb amateur. He's not shoddy in the technical department himself. Plus, he's got the power, the strength, the ring generalship as well. Everything's impressive about him, and it's hard to see, even though light heavyweight's a great division, it's hard to see any of them beating Beterbiev anytime soon. And Josh Buatsi, who you mentioned earlier in the Young Guns category, I think he's really highly rated now with the IBF. He might even be their top-rated contender. If Beterbiev fights against his mandatory Fan Long Meng, or Meng Fan Long, whichever way we say it, after the lockdown's kind of finished, I'm not sure what the plans are for that. But Buatsi might slip into that mandatory position, and he's fortunate in a way that Beterbiev will have mandatory obligations for two governing bodies, because it gives Buatsi a bit more time to acclimatise to world level and Beterbiev to get a bit older. But yeah, for me, no doubt the number one in the division right now.
Agreed, mate. It's hard to see who could beat him. I'm interested if he does fight Ramirez. I think that would be probably one of the best fights in that division right now, because I'm a fan of both of them. And I'll move on to my second from last pick, Jean Pascal. And it's interesting because for me, he's one of the strongest, most intimidating fighters when he does fight. I really enjoy watching him fight. He cuts off the ring really well. He's had some good victories over the last few years. I'm going to put him in the... Well, he's a world champion, the regular WBA world champ, so he's going to go in the world champions category, although he's not the super
I don't think we could put... No, hold on. I don't think we could put a regular champion in world champions, not when there's a super champion in the same division.
That's cool. I'm happy with that. I don't agree with that whole, regular stuff anyway. So we'll put him in the contenders instead then. He's lost to Bivol before. He still has to go in the contenders, but... I can't see him beating Bivol again, and Beterbiev is the man right now. However, as I said at the start of sort of the reason why I put him in the contenders, he's so strong and his power is sublime in those big fights as well. In those big moments, he cuts off the ring really well. So I can't see a reason why he's at the back of his career now. I know he's been fighting for a long, long time, but I still think he's got something left in his tank, and he's going to give a lot of world level still.
Yeah, I might as well do Bivol next, as you've mentioned him anyway. WBA champion, of course. I feel a bit sorry for him because he doesn't seem to get those big fights at light heavyweight. Partly, I guess, because he's with the Zone and Matchroom and a lot of the other fighters with other promoters through no fault of his own. But he's got a bit more time on his side than some of them as well. He's still quite young. Very, very intelligent, adept fighter. Not a one-punch knockout artist, although Sullivan Barrera may disagree. But I think 4 of his 6 defences have all gone the distance. The last 4 in a row have all gone to the judges. But I think he does hurt you with punches when he sets his feet. I think he hits hard enough to dissuade people from attacking him recklessly. But he's just not that big one-punch hitter. But he's only going to get better in time. He's a very smart boxer. There's a lot to like about his work. He's a good body puncher as well. So I think in time he could inherit that mantle. I mean, Beterbiev's style lends itself to kind of putting more miles on the clock. And I'm not sure you could say the same with Bivol, who's quite smooth. I mean, he doesn't mind getting involved, but he doesn't get hit as much, I don't think, as Beterbiev. But then I suppose Beterbiev has a few more early nights. So it depends how you look at it. But I think if he carries on doing what he's doing, gradually amps up the quality of opposition, he could be right there. And a fight between him and Beterbiev, obviously both Russians, would be amazing.
Certainly, in a division packed with 3 of the best Russians, in a packed division as it is, I think it'd be great to see a Russian showdown with the 2 top guys. There's no doubt for me Beterbiev would come out victorious, but the 2 styles would make a great fight.
Good stuff.
I think that leads me on to my last pin, Badou Jack. He's had 1 win in 5 fights, and although his last fight was a great fight, he's going to get a rematch for the regular world title against Jean Pascal. He's got to go in the also rounds as much as he's been a world champ before, and he's still shown he's got something in his tank. He takes up from when he was winning a lot more back in the day. His accuracy is sort of not there anymore, and he can take a lot. He's still going the distance. It's not like that, but it's just his speed as well, and his flair that he had when he was champ is not there anymore. So, it is with regret. I sound like Alan Sugar here. It is with regret you're fighting now. He'll be in the also round.
I feel a bit for Badou Jack because he was clearly too big to stay at super middleweight, where he was doing really well. He had that draw with James DeGale. Many people thought he did enough to win. There was going to be a rematch, but he decided, it was hard for him to make the weight and he needed to move up. Very muscular guy. But he's probably not quite big enough for light heavyweight. Ideally for him, he'd probably be fighting somewhere 170, 172 pounds, but that isn't the division. And he's up against kind of monsters at light heavyweight who are very big and who are closer to their prime. Yeah. And as you alluded to, he's had some tough fights over the years. And maybe they're just starting to catch up with him. So, yeah. I think it's a tough call on your part, but I'll probably agree with it. My last one, it's a bit of a wild card, but I think I just wanted an excuse to talk about him, really, and it's Damian Hooper, who just a bit of an anomaly, Australian boxer, Olympic rep, 2012, started his pro career off with Hatton Promotions, a UK company, but they split ultimately, and it's interesting because he's beaten Umar Salamov, the Russian who's part of this WBO mini tournament for their vacant title. And after that, he stopped or knocked out Reynold Quinlan, for Eubank Jr. And Hooper is good puncher, really talented, bit of flair, amateur pedigree, quite everything you'd think to be a superstar. But he's just a bad character, basically. Like, he originally started boxing, I think it was 11 years old, because he'd already been in trouble with the police. 11 years old.
Yeah.
So that's pretty nefarious to already be like attracting the attention of the old Bill at 11. But that kind of pushed him into boxing, started to kind of turn his life around, became a really great amateur, but has since been in trouble several times with the law, not just as an amateur, but as a pro as well, and quite serious stuff as well, from assault. I'm not saying he's been convicted of all of these, but certainly either arrested or charged. Assault, domestic abuse, brawls in pubs, drug stuff as well. I don't know if he's been arrested for that, but he has got a substance abuse problem. I think he came out on parole in February from his most recent stay inside and was talking about going into rehab. It just seems like he's throwing his career away, which is a real shame, because he is a really good fighter. And when he's kind of himself, he's quite a charismatic guy as well. But he's got to go in the also-rans category because I had to include him in the 12 just because he's got a victory over Salamov and deserves to be in here as one of the best. But he hasn't fought for nearly or just over 2 years, I think. And it's really frustrating because he's got all the ability, but through these character flaws that he has, he's probably never going to realise his potential.
I agree, to be fair. It was a strange pick, but it's also an interesting one, and I think he has to go in that category. But should we both do one more, and should we decide for Callum Johnson? Where do you think he should go? Just for the English audience.
What? So we're going to do this between us? So it's like a 13th pick.
Yeah, why not? Because I think it's quite an interesting one, and for the sake of the hopefully the fight between him and Joshua Buatsi soon, I think. Would you agree with put him in contenders? Obviously, he's had a world title fight before. It was a very good fight. It was close. He didn't look like he didn't belong there. I think he showed that he could compete at that level. But do you think he could win a world title?
For me, and this might seem harsh, I think it comes down to whether he beats Buatsi. Like, if you think that he's going to beat Buatsi, then he's a contender, 100%. If you think he's going to lose to Buatsi, who's only a young gun at the moment, then he can't go in contenders, really, can he? He's got to go in also-rans, because if he loses to Buatsi, harsh as it is, his career's over, pretty much.
No,
he's a lot older than Buatsi. He's had some tough fights. He's had a long stretches of inactivity in his career as well through different issues. No personal issues, but injuries and stuff like that, not being able to get fights. So, Buatsi's the young up-and-comer, and a victory over him springboards Johnson right onto the verge of another world title shot, but a loss to him ends him as a world-level contender.
That's the thing, and I think especially, Eddie Hearn obviously being the promoter in that situation, it's difficult for him because two of his guys coming up against each other, it's not a win-win, it's a win, and then one of you guys is going to end up on the sort of the back end of it on the wrong side, which is not good. But as for Johnson at the moment, he's going to need to get a world title shot in the next year or maybe two maximum, because if not, he's going to, he's getting on, is what I'm trying to say. So if he has that Buatsi fight in the next year and gets through it, then he's a contender. If not, I don't think so. But if we're talking about Buatsi versus Johnson, I'm backing Buatsi, to be honest.
Yeah, I'm backing Buatsi too, which unfortunately condemns Johnson to the also-ran category. But I think that's fair enough. I think if we're going to say Buatsi's a young gun rising to contender, and we both think if they fight, he's the winner of that fight, then I think that's fair.
Hopefully it just does happen, because I think that's just going to be, with so much on the line for both of these guys, Joshua Buatsi being out for so long, they're both going to have a lot to show in that ring. And get it on, man. Let's do it.
Good stuff. We'll be back next week with another boxed in tier list. We're not sure of the division yet. I kind of suggested light heavy this week, so I think Joe should pick next week's one, and we'll see where everyone ends up.
Thank you for tuning in.